Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. It is Cave Week here at Quilt Addicts Anonymous. We were able to get back in stock the quilts that we designed to go with the Kaffe Prism Classics. This is a reorderable pre-cut. Now normally, especially with Kaffe and pre-cuts, it's one and done. You cannot get more, but we are able to get more of this. So we were able to bring it in, and we are celebrating by getting more in by re-releasing all the tutorials of the patterns that go with it. I was super honored to be asked by Free Spirit to collaborate and use some of our designs to bring these fabrics to life. This one is called Retro Tiles. It's really fun. It uses a 10-inch charm pack, which I've got everything prettily on top, so let's move that. So we've got a 10-inch charm pack. It's got all the colors of the rainbow in there. It's super pretty, and we did a tutorial on this last Christmas. It's part of our 12 Makes of Christmas series, and I used a holiday one, and in it, I showed you how I organize my fabrics, so that way it is a subtle transition from one fabric to another. So make sure you are watching and paying attention to that part, because that's how we made this one, where we were able to subtly transition from this deep one at the top all the way down to the blue at the very bottom. And so each one changes by one color as you're going around and laying them out, and it's super fun, super fabulous to work with. Again, if you just totally mix it up, that's totally cool too. It's up to you. But if you want to have that real cool, where everything is transitioning just one at a time, then, and have it look like our sample, then check that out, because we show you exactly how to do it. This is really a fun one to do. It's very simple. It uses almost every piece of your 10-inch charm pack, and then also your background. This is a shock cotton background, so it is a kind of woven linen-y type fabric. It's very beautiful, quilts up beautifully. You can see all the texture that our quilter Shelly Moore did in this. She did a fabulous job, and it really just helps bring out the fun color change of this. All right, so kits available over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. Retro Tiles, the pattern, is available as a PDF, so you can get it right away and print it off, or if you want a paper copy, we do have those. And you can get going on this. I've made this now, this is the third time that we've remade this. I've got a batik for the original and this one, and then the Christmas one, which still needs to be quilted, and it turns out pretty every single time. I really had fun with this Kaffe one because it is bright and bold, and it looks so much fun. You can just see how pretty this background looks with all of these bright colors, because you can get away with that with Kaffe. All right, let's go check out the tutorial. So now we're finally going to get around to doing a video on this. You use a layer cake or 10-inch square charm pack, they are called, and you can use yardage, or in this case I bought, and you guys can too, a bunch of already pre-cut 10-inch squares. So that's really great because it just makes you get through it that much faster, because you can just cut and you don't have to cut from yardage to start with. So 2 of these will get you a lap quilt. You'll actually have some extra. You could make it a little bigger if you wanted, but the pattern has multiple sizes on it, so you also could check that out and decide what size you want to make it, and maybe get a couple of these. And then of course you need some binding, and you will be good to go. So typically when I do a video like this, I do all my cutting before I get started, but I'm going to actually do some of that on camera for you guys, because one thing that I want to show you is how I organize when I'm doing a pre-cut pattern, how I organize those pre-cuts so that I get a scrappy look without having to plan out each block, because that can really slow you down, and then you still get frustrated because something ends up next to each other that you didn't want. And this is a good way to kind of avoid that. Make sure you have different fabrics in every block, but you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it or planning each one. So I've already cut my white. I've got some left over here. I actually have 8 left over here that if you wanted, you could just make the quilt bigger, but I'm going to do it as the pattern is written and do the 36 squares to make it square. But you can always play with it and make all these up. And now I'm going to start cutting this one, and I'm going to show you how I go through that process. But again, this is super simple, because instead of cutting yardage for the white, you just cut across there and then you cut your pieces from it, and it goes so much faster than having to press your yardage and cut your yardage along the width of fabric and then cut all the little strips out. You know, you can just I'd grab 4 at a time, and I would cut, and I was through it pretty quickly, so that was pretty nice. All right, so let's get started. And just as a reminder, we do have all this fabric on our website. I know a lot of the projects we've been having you guys use stash, but we do have, at least at the time I'm filming this, we have quite a few of the 10-inch charm packs, and also of the Polar Magic by Lemony for Figo, and then also the 10-inch charm packs for that are just the white. And if we run out of this, we do have white yardage because I ordered that too in my order that took a month to ship. So I'm going to start getting into this, and I'm going to show you how I organize this fabric and cut it so that, and then arrange it when I'm sewing so that I can, you know, be as efficient as possible, maybe get it done for Christmas. Actually, we're trying to get it done in a couple of days so that we can show it to you as a finished top at least. I know we won't quilt it, but we'll at least have the top done for you. All right, so these packs come 42 to a pack always. I only need 36 for this quilt. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flip it over because I wanna keep it in the order that it is in, but I wanna go through my fabrics here. All right, so essentially, I'm not gonna count every one that I'm keeping. I'm gonna count the ones that I'm pulling because I want to pull 8. And Figo is really good. What they do is they put in what is called Lucky Charms. And so they'll fill out with basic. So this is a basic, it's called Lucky Charms, and you can tell because it's got a horseshoe on it instead of some Christmas stuff. So this is really great because it helps build the color story, but these are the ones that I'm going to pull first, and if I need to, I can fill them back in later. And there's 2 of each print in the line. That way it's nice because you can still kind of get a full color story without having to have like 3 to 4 some of the prints like some of the other brands do. All right, so I've got 1 solid in here. I am gonna keep that because I've already pulled 4 that had the print on it, and the color works, but the print is just not quite what I want it to be since I have some that I can pull out. This is also good, you know, if you just have a fabric that you're just not in love with, or it's one of those lines where you have like 3 of a print, you can pull out the ones that you have a lot of and then keep the rest. So I'm gonna set these aside. We can save these and use them for another project, just not this one. All right, so I'm gonna flip this over one more time because I wanna keep this in order as I'm cutting it, and you'll see how I do that. So I'm gonna just move that to the side and get out my cutting mat, and I'm gonna start cutting these. All right, so to make this go faster, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab 4 of these at a time to cut all at once. So I'm grabbing from the pile that I have over here that's upside down, and then I'm laying it right side up. So that way I'm gonna keep the color order that they put it in. It's really pretty, and they had somebody who really knew what they were doing put it together, and that's the case with most pre-cuts that you get. The color story that you have looks real nice as it is. So that way I can maintain that order, and now I can go ahead and cut my strips and then cut those apart to create my log cabin strips. All right, so the cutting instructions for this are in the pattern to go with it. Again, it's called Retro Tiles. You can get a paper copy or a downloadable PDF on our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. I'm not going to give you the measurements that you need to cut to because they're included in there. And if you've appreciated all the free tutorials and project ideas we gave you, we would love it if you said thanks and got the pattern from us. But essentially what I'm going to do is I've cut my strips from my squares, and I had just a little bit left over. If you're a scrap saver, have fun with that. If not, I don't know, tie some bows or something and put them on your Christmas presents this year. So now I'm going to grab 1 strip at a time, and I'm going to cut that to the measurement listed. So the first one for the longest outside strip, I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to get rid of a little section of this. But for all the others, we're going to use the entire strip, and essentially we're going to get 2 legs of that log cabin from every strip except for 1. All right, so this one, we just toss that. Now for all the rest of these, I'm gonna be able to cut, and I'll have one piece that'll be a long strip and another piece that will be the short, tiny one. So this is my second to longest strip and my shortest one. I can go ahead and pull those over. And then each one is going to get progressively different in size. All right, so I have cut all of the sizes that I need for this project. I do have one strip left over. You could save this and do additional with it, with the extras, because you will have extra from your layer cake and you will have extra from your background if you wanted to make it bigger than the 36 that is in the lap size. So you could just have a lot of fun with that. I'm just gonna move it to the side because we're trying to do this as quick as possible, and so I'm not gonna get all fancy and do extras at this time. We'll just give this to one of our staff members who really loves tiny things to work with, and she can make something fabulous with it. All right, so I'm just going to keep going with that process. And what I just do is, I'll bring this over so you can see, I've still got this one upside down. And so what I do is I just line that up, and I'll line it up with that 0-inch mark and with an inch line on my ruler. That way I can use the measurements on my mat to cut. I don't have to move anything. And I can then just lay down 2 more on top of that. And I'm just going to keep going, cutting 4 of these at a time, and cutting the 5 strips that I need and cutting those apart for my block. And I will keep going until I made it through my entire stack of 36 for the lap size version, and then I will be ready to sew this together. So we'll have some more tips on how I keep this organized to keep it nice and scrappy when we start sewing, but I really wanted to take a little bit extra time to show this to you, because this way I'm going to be able to maintain the order that it came in, so that way it's going to make it easier when I start sewing it together to have that scrappy look without planning and fussing a lot to make sure that it is perfect to start with. So I did a little bit of basic math wrong. I actually only needed to remove 6. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling back that dark green horseshoe print because the print is really small. So from a distance, you're going to see the color more than you will everything else. And I think a little bit more dark green in this quilt will be fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a cut with my last piece from here. And then I'm going to put it back in the order of where it normally should be with the other dark greens of the line. All right, so that took me about 40 minutes to cut through the 36 strips that I needed for this quilt, or the 36 10-inch squares. And that seems like a lot of time, but if I would have to cut all the yardage first and then cross cut everything, it would have taken much longer, and it also would have I would not have had as much variety. So this is a great way to do it. It makes it a lot faster. So essentially between that and then cutting my white, I probably am like an hour and 15 minutes into this project, and I already have all my pieces cut for a lap size quilt, and they're not large pieces. They are skinny pieces, so that's a lot to do, and it really is very efficient. All right, so now I'm going to show you how I arrange these in order to get it to change color gradually without having to think about it when you're working. All right, so all I'm going to sew on camera today is going to be the inner circle, because once you know how to do the inner circle, you've got everything else covered. So I'm going to show you the entire bit. We'll speed it up for the actual sewing part so you can see how this works. But here's how I arrange this. What I'll do is I'll start out where I've got that last fabric all on top with everything. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that first fabric and I'm going to move it to the bottom of my stack. And then for this next one, I'm going to take the top 2 fabrics, that teal solid, and I'm going to move those to the bottom of my stack. And I would keep moving, going. The next one would be the top 3, so that way whatever is underneath here would be in the next one. And that way you can gradually get a change in fabric coming out, and you're never going to repeat a fabric within your section, or within a single block, but you don't have to think about it at all. And so that's fabulous. It's something you can definitely do just to unwind at the end end of the night while watching, you know, some Netflix or something without having to get frustrated about, oh, I've already used this fabric, I need to find another one. And, you know, this is just a really easy way to keep track of it and make that work. All right, so I'm gonna start sewing. I'm gonna sew these two together to start with. And the diagram, by the way, tells you exactly what you need to put where, so make sure you check out the pattern to go with this. Again, that's called Retro Tiles. You can get a PDF or a paper pattern over at shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. All right, so I'm going to start by just putting these guys right sides together. Remember, I've got 2 of every one, so we will do 2 together. And I don't pin this. I might in some of the longer ones, but for right now, I'm just going to arrange them right sides together and sew. And a really great way to make this go super, super fast is going to be to chain piece these. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my second one, get those arranged with my corners nice and lined up, and then you just lift up your presser foot, slide it under, and sew. All right, so I'm going to keep going, keeping everything in order and sewing these through. All right, so I finished sewing and I have my chain of pieces together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting these apart, and I'm making sure to stack them. I'm not being super neat, but I am making sure that they are in order because I want to maintain that color change, so that way it's going to be nice when we put everything together. All right, so I've got my stack, and as you can see, I've got my top fabric that I started with on top here, and I want that to be on top when I'm done. So if I take this and I start pressing it and I just start stacking it up, I'm going to have everything upside down when I go to sew again. So the easiest way to do that without having to go through and restack everything is just to flip it over and start with your, in this case, dark greens on the bottom, but whatever's at the bottom, you're going to press that first, and then we're going to lay it back down right in the center. Now, I may have written this pattern before I decided to press everything open. So if that's the case, ignore that, pressing anything to the side, and press it open instead. You're going to get a much better block in the end if you do it that way. Since these backgrounds came from different manufacturers, you can see there's a slight change in size between my ones here. Don't worry about that. You can absolutely ease it in as you are working. All right, so I'm going to start my stack and making sure that my print fabric is facing the prints and my background is facing the background. So I got everything pressed. Now it's time to sew that all together. I'm going to sew to this one. And what I like to do is I always like to keep my pressed open seam on top. I find that's easier because then I don't accidentally flip it under when it hits my sewing machine plate. And at this point, I'm still not going to pin. I'm going to go ahead and just line up my corners and go from there. And I'm finding that the white one was just a little bit larger than 10 inches. So what I'm going to do is, rather than cut everything down, I'm just going to ease that little bit extra in as I go. So I'm not going to fuss with that or worry about it. I'm just gonna, you know, eat it up as I go, because I know that all of my longer strips are cut to the exact size. So once I get to those outside strips, I'll be able to get everything the way it should be without having to go through and cut every single one of these, because that's a huge pain. We're not going to do that. All right, so we're just going to start just like we did before. I've got my top points together. And you can see that I've got just a little bit of extra white here, and I'm just going to sew right off of that. I'm not going to try to like make it fit. I'm just going to have a little bit extra in the seam allowance for that white section when I get to it. All right, so just like before, I'm go ahead and cutting everything apart and keeping it in order and stacking it on top of one another. All right, so I finished my stack, and this light one that is on the top is currently on the top, but just like before, if I were to just start pressing in this order, everything would be out of order when I go to start sewing it again. So I'm going to take my entire stack and flip it over, and I'm going to start with that dark green that's supposed to be on the bottom, that way I can just stack it right up when I'm pressing and I'm ready to go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and keep pressing and sewing. I think we are going to cut here, and then I will sew all of these together for the center, and then I'll show you one more tip when I am all done with that center, so that way you always know what side you're supposed to be sewing once you finish that center. All right, so I've got my first section all sewn together, and from here is where you can tell real easily where the next side is. The first one you really have to watch and pay attention to your diagram on the pattern, but now there's always going to be two seams where the next one goes together. So that makes life a lot easier, because we also, as you see, have some white that would fit next to this too, but it's really easy to tell, okay, I just sewed this on, so now it's time to add this bit here, and it belongs right there. So it just makes life a lot easier once you can tell what's what, and you can see that everything is changing up just the way it's supposed to. We haven't repeated anything yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and pull out the next two that would be going around here. And so what I would do is, we've already seen this one and this one, and we've seen this fa la la over there, so I'm going to grab that, and we'll just rotate those to the bottom, keep them in order, and they will just it will just continue to change as it goes, and with almost no effort from you. It's just really simple, really easy to get really scrappy, really beautiful coordinated results without a lot of fuss or thinking too hard about it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. It is called Retro Tiles. It's a log cabin, but it's set in a modern setting, which makes it fun. And just remember, we do have, at least at the time that I'm filming this, we have the Polar Magic 10-inch square packs, as well as the 10-inch square packs of the white that you can get as well, to make this go super fast, and maybe you can actually finish it for this holiday season. I'm going to see if I can. We'll see. I think I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off after doing this huge long series. It would take a couple of days at least to maybe do a few things for fun for me and my girls. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Make sure to check out our website, shop.quiltaddictsanonymous.com. You can sign up for emails there, and you will send you a 10% off coupon code you can use on your first purchase. And make sure you're also subscribed to our channel if you've enjoyed this series, because we post weekly video tutorials for you guys. We might try to do some bonus ones in the new year, and we'll just see. You know, we've got some fun things going. 2021 hopefully will be a lot better than 2020. So we've had a lot of fun. We still do have some videos planned for you for the end of this year. So stay tuned, and until next week, happy quilting.